I was playing for England, coming back and watching other players, who are not even getting into England, playing in the Tottenham side. It might be friendlies or whatever. So, I mean, is it professionally kind of a jealous kind of thing? But I'm thinking, well, why am I not getting a chance? Get your chance, score on your debut, and then you don't see me again. Get it?
I'm Brandon, and this is Beyond Football. The unbelievable betrayal of Sol Campbell is not just a transfer story. It is the moment football fans across England realised that loyalty is just a word, that the badge on the front of the shirt can mean less than the name on the back, that your hero can look you in the eye, promise he is staying, and then disappear into the night to join your worst enemy. This is a story about trust, deception, and how one man traded his soul for a trophy cabinet. And if this story already has you shaking your head, tap hype and give this video some hype, because what happens next is even more shocking than you think. Before we dive into the betrayal itself, we need to understand what made it so painful. Because Sol Campbell was not just another player, he was one of their own. Born in East London, he joined the Tottenham youth system after a brief time at West Ham. He made his debut in December 1992 and quickly became something special. Over 9 years at White Hart Lane, he made 315 appearances and scored 15 goals. He lifted the League Cup in 1999, but the numbers do not tell the full story. What mattered was what he represented. In an era where Spurs rarely finished above 7th in the league, Campbell was the light in the darkness. He was the homegrown captain, the leader, the one who was supposed to bleed for the badge. Fans believed he was different. They believed he would never leave, and he let them believe it. By 1997, Campbell had been given the captain's armband. He was not just a player anymore, he was the personification of the club's soul. While Spurs struggled for consistency, Campbell was establishing himself as one of the best defenders in England. He became a fixture in the national team and even became the country's second youngest captain. The problem was obvious. His individual trajectory was sharply outstripping the club's. He wanted Champions League football. Spurs could not give it to him. And that is where the cracks began to show. As his contract ran down, the club did everything they could to keep him. The ENIC ownership offered him a record-breaking deal, £80,000 per week. Some reports even said £100,000 per week when you included endorsements. It would have made him the highest-paid player in Tottenham's history. The club was willing to break the bank for him. They were willing to restructure their entire wage system. They saw him as the foundation of the future. But Campbell kept stalling. He kept saying the right things in public while doing something very different in private. And that is what makes this a horror story. Throughout the final year of his contract, Campbell played a dual-track game. In public, he was the loyal captain, reassuring a desperate fanbase. In private, he was engineering the most shocking move in English football history. He famously stated in Spurs Monthly magazine that he would never play for Arsenal. Let me repeat that. He said he would never play for Arsenal. Those words are still burned into the memory of every Tottenham fan who lived through this. Then, in January 2001, with his contract running down, he gave another statement. He said, "I am not going anywhere. I am here and I am staying. I want to play for Tottenham Hotspur." And that's it really. These were not just professional statements. They were sacred oaths to fans who had nothing else to celebrate. And they were lies. What made this even worse was the way Campbell used the Bosman ruling as a weapon. In 1995, a new law allowed players to move for free at the end of their contracts. Campbell and his agent Sky Andrew used this framework not just for mobility, but to inflict maximum damage on Tottenham. By refusing to sign a new deal or allow a transfer during his final year, he ensured Spurs would receive not a single penny for their most valuable asset. His market value was around £20 million in 2001. That money could have rebuilt the defence. Instead, it vanished. Spurs lost their captain to their rival and lost the transfer fee they desperately needed to replace him. It was a double blow designed to hurt as much as possible. While the public thought Campbell was considering offers from Barcelona or Inter Milan, the reality was far more sinister. He was holding secret meetings in the dead of night at the home of Arsenal vice-chairman David Dein in Totteridge. These were not normal negotiations. They were clandestine summits designed to avoid any media attention. The location itself was chosen deliberately allegedly. Totteridge sits on the border between North London territories, a neutral ground where prying eyes would not think to look. The final meeting happened in the early hours of Wednesday, July 3, 2001. Campbell and Sky Andrew arrived at 11 o'clock at night. Arsene Wenger flew back from Nice specifically for this meeting, abandoning his summer holiday to close the deal. The negotiations were so secret that when David Dean's son Gavin came home from a nightclub at 2 in the morning, he stumbled into the room and casually offered to make breakfast. He had no idea he was witnessing the most controversial transfer negotiation in London's history. The absurdity of that moment still stands out to me. A young man coming home from a night out, completely unaware that history was being written in his father's living room. Campbell reportedly took a moonlit drive around midnight to make his final decision. He had prepared a list of pros and cons. It was a calculated business decision disguised as soul-searching. By 3 in the morning, the deal was sealed. He did not leave until daybreak. Campbell framed it as a football decision. He talked about a family atmosphere and protection from Dean and Wenger. Arsenal offered him around £130,000 per week, about £5 million per season in total. From a pure business perspective, it made sense, but from a human perspective, it was calculated betrayal. He could have gone abroad. He could have taken the record deal at Spurs. Instead, he chose the one destination that would cause maximum pain. In recent years, Campbell has tried to reframe the story. He claims Tottenham tried to use a false assault charge as leverage during negotiations. The charge alleged he had broken a match steward's arm. It was later dropped. Campbell says the club tried to force him into a new contract using this situation. Now, I personally think this gives us a glimpse into how toxic things were at the time. But here is the thing. Even if that is true, it does not justify choosing Arsenal. If he wanted to escape a bad situation, he could have gone to Italy or Spain. The choice of Arsenal was not about escaping Tottenham, it was about winning trophies, and he did not care who he hurt to get them. The unveiling on July 3, 2001 is widely regarded as the most shocking press conference in Premier League history. Journalists had been invited to Arsenal's training ground at London Colney. They were told it was for the signing of Richard Wright, a backup goalkeeper from Ipswich Town. The expectation was so mundane that many major outlets did not even send their main reporters. They thought it was routine. A backup goalkeeper signing does not warrant the top team, so they sent junior reporters or freelancers. Nobody expected what came next. Then the door opened. Instead of Richard Wright, out walked Sol Campbell with Arsene Wenger and David Dean. The silence that followed was described as the sound of a century of tradition shattering. Journalists gasped audibly. Camera shutters clicked frantically as the reality set in. Some reporters later said they thought they were hallucinating. This could not be real. Wenger later recalled the disbelief on their faces. He said the secret had been held so tightly that nobody turned up because they assumed it was just Richard Wright. This was tactical deception at its finest. The news broke as sudden, overwhelming trauma rather than a slow, managed transition. At around noon, Campbell sat down and called it a football decision. Wenger declared him the best defender in the country, and just like that, the deed was done. Tottenham fans woke up that morning expecting another mediocre summer. By lunchtime, their captain was wearing red. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. This was not just losing a player, this was the destruction of an archetype. The one-club man was supposed to mean something. Players like Tony Adams at Arsenal or Gary Neville at Manchester United were seen as the moral compass of their teams. Campbell was supposed to be the Tottenham equivalent. He was a product of the Spurs academy who rose through the ranks to wear the armband. When he looked into the cameras and said he was staying, he was not just discussing a contract. He was validating the fans' belief that their club was worthy of devotion. The move to Arsenal was not just a professional choice, it was a rejection of their identity. It suggested that all those years of chanting, "one of our own," were based on a lie. 4 months later, the true scale of the hatred was revealed. On November 17, 2001, Campbell returned to White Hart Lane in the red of Arsenal. The atmosphere was described as poisonous, tense, and marred by a vileness that alarmed the National Criminal Intelligence Service. This was not normal football hostility. This was personal. This was tribal. This was a community expressing collective trauma through rage. Supporters did not just label him a traitor, they branded him with biblical weight. The Judas moniker became his permanent tournament identity. As the teams emerged, over 4,000 white balloons bearing the word Judas were released into the air. One banner simply read, John 13:27. That is a Bible verse that says, "As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. So Jesus told him, what you are about to do quickly." They were not just angry, they were spiritually wounded. The Arsenal team bus was pelted with coins, cans and bottles. Riot police formed barriers between the mob and the vehicle. The scenes outside the stadium were chaotic and threatening. Inside the stadium, every touch Campbell made was met with a hurricane of boos and hissing, so intense it shocked even his Arsenal teammates. They had tried to prepare him during training sessions at their Colney facility, but nothing could prepare anyone for that level of vitriol. During the warm-up, missiles and bottles were thrown at him. One drink bottle hit him directly. His former teammates like Teddy Sheringham stuck the boot in during a bruising 1-1 draw. But despite the extreme hostility, Campbell performed with quiet authority and calmness. He refused to react. He won the physical battle on the pitch. But the Judas branding was a social execution from which his legacy would never recover. What made this hatred so enduring is that it represents something bigger than football. It represents the death of innocence in the modern game. For many fans, the Campbell transfer marked the end of the romantic era. It was the moment they realized loyalty was just a currency used by players when it suited them. By saying "I'm staying" and then leaving for free to a rival, Campbell exposed the commodification of the relationship in its rawest form. Even 25 years later, the resentment remains a defining feature of the North London derby. Some chants had racist and homophobic undertones that authorities struggled to suppress. While most fans defended their right to express passion, the abuse often crossed into illegal territory. Stadium bans were handed out years later, but the core emotion was never about hate for hate's sake. It was about betrayal of trust. And here is the salt in the wound. Campbell went on to become an invincible. He won 2 Premier League titles and 3 FA Cups at Arsenal. He even scored for Arsenal in the 2006 Champions League final. His success was not just good, it was relentless. Every trophy felt like another twist of the knife. To Spurs fans, these trophies were not just Arsenal's gain, they were built on a stolen foundation. Their captain had been acquired through tactical deception and used to humiliate them for years. In retirement, Campbell has frequently questioned why he is not more celebrated or loved. He seems oblivious to the fact that he traded lifelong devotion for professional success. He made a choice and now lives with the consequences of that choice. As one observer noted, he got everything he ever wanted in terms of medals, but he became nobody's favourite player. A man who wanders from media appearance to media appearance asking why nobody loves him. From a purely sporting perspective, Arsene Wenger's acquisition was perhaps the greatest steal in Premier League history. Wenger recognised his backline was ageing fast. Tony Adams and Martin Keown were approaching the end of their careers. By securing Campbell on a free transfer deal, he did not just replace a veteran, he upgraded the entire defensive structure with a player at the absolute peak of his powers. The success was immediate. Campbell's first season at Arsenal ended with a domestic double, winning both the Premier League and the FA Cup. For Wenger, crossing the North London divide paid off in gold. For Spurs, it was a humiliating reminder of their secondary status. The move also fundamentally altered how Premier League clubs manage their assets. It became a cautionary tale about letting key players' contracts run down. The strategic response included several shifts. Smaller clubs began selling rising stars a year or two before contracts expired to avoid losing them for free. The role of agents like Sky Andrew led to greater scrutiny and a shift in power dynamics. Clubs began tying down youth talent to increasingly long and restrictive deals to protect market value. Arsenal's ability to swoop in and acquire one of the world's best defenders for free highlighted the growing gap between top-tier clubs and the chasing pack. It showcased financial and tactical strength that allowed them to humiliate rivals while bolstering their squad without spending on the transfer fee. The trauma also affected Tottenham's institutional confidence for many years to come. For years afterward, they struggled to convince their best players the club could match their ambitions. The Campbell precedent was used as a warning to never let contracts run down. But it also created fear that any star player was just waiting for a better offer. Whether it was Dimitar Berbatov, Luka Modric, or Gareth Bale, the fear of another Judas moment loomed over negotiations. While none joined Arsenal, the bitterness of Campbell's move ensured Spurs fans would always view the departure of a homegrown icon with a sharpened sense of betrayal. So, here is the question. Was Sol Campbell's move the smartest decision in sports history or the ultimate sin? On paper, it was brilliant. He traded a stagnant mid-table existence for a legacy of trophies and medals. He avoided a transfer fee and maximised his wages substantially. He joined a family that would protect him. He became an invincible and cemented his permanent place in Arsenal history. From a career perspective, he won. But the cost was his soul in the eyes of North London. He traded unconditional love for a trophy cabinet that, while full of gold, lacks the warmth of a true home. He became the most hated man in English football, branded with a biblical label that 25 years has not erased. I personally think Sol Campbell proved something important. He showed the world that loyalty is often just a marketing term, that players will say whatever they need to say to keep fans calm while they plan their exit. And in doing so, he changed football forever. Fans became more cynical. Clubs became more ruthless. The emotional investment that once characterized the relationship between players and supporters was replaced by transactional skepticism. The romantic era died the night Campbell signed at David Dean's house, and we are still living in the aftermath. But here is the thing. Football survived. Tottenham survived. The fans moved on, even if they never forgave. They learned that the club is bigger than any one player, that the badge does mean something, even if individual players do not always honour it. The betrayal hurt because they cared, and they still care. That is what makes football beautiful. The pain is proof of the passion. Sol Campbell won the game, but he lost his legacy, and the lessons learned from that night in Totteridge are still shaping how we view loyalty, ambition, and the beautiful game today. If this story got you thinking, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me what you think. Was Sol Campbell a genius or a traitor? Let me know.